hails from an Indian traditional family with its roots in Kanchipuram, a very ancient town of India, which has been the silk center of the South through ages and is also known for its age-old temples, saints, and scholars. He had his schooling in Rishi Valley School, then graduated from Madras Christian College and did his post-graduation in Business Administration from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore. After managing the family businesses in various verticals such as oil and gas and FMCG supply chain for 8 years and heading the marketing for a building industry product for 12 years, during which he established the brand and sales network in India and abroad, he has chosen to follow the calling in his life. With the pursuit and seeking of knowledge through questioning, a temper perhaps influenced by his schooling days in Rishi Valley. Besides Bharat Gyan, D.K. Hari is also involved in various social activities such as the management of Hindu Mission Hospital, a 200-bed multidisciplinary hospital in Chennai, Valuar Gurukulam, a school for educating first-generation children in Chennai, Dakshina Chitra, a heritage museum in Chennai. I now request Sri D.K. Hari to enthrall our audience with his insightful wisdom.
Another important information is that he is also with his best half, Dr. Hema Hari. Please give a round of applause for her too.
Jai Gurudev. It's a wonderful hall and it's so nice to be here every time for each important event. It's a wonderful place. Absolutely exhilarating and uplifting. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Sri Narendra Lambaji for specifically inviting us. Say you should be at this program. I don't know if he's here or not. First of all, thank you. And to Sri Ashutosh Chawla ji for ensuring that we are here. Thank you. Okay. My wife will also be joining me, and I'll be saying the general words and she'll be saying the major word. Okay? Okay. Now, we have been doing research in this field called Bharat Gyan. It's available in our articles, blogs, all that you can see, website, all that. We'll get on to the subject of the day, which is architecture. And this is a subject of Vastu Kala that's been there in this land for millennia. Let's see how many millennia and more or something that we can see now. Okay? And this Vastu Kala understanding is right from the moment of Brahmanda Visfotak, that is the Big Bang creation. From when space was created, since then you have, through all the Mandakinis, many Mandakini, to the Surya Mandala, that is the solar system, Surya Mandala, okay? Surya Malika, not just Surya Malika, from there it comes all the way. It's a space continuum, right up to the earth grid. So it's not just some 8 by 8 square or 64 by 64 square, just limited to a mandir or a house or a bhavan or something. It is a continuum in space. That is what this Vastu Purusha Mandala is all about, is something that we should understand. It's the divinity of the space is what it is. So Bhuloka itself is a representative of that concept of space. So Vastu, material, Vastu, the space of it. Okay? And Sthapana, Sthapatya Kala, all this is part of it. To establish this art is a part of this whole concept. Okay? And you have the concept of mandala, the edifice, and the amalgam of all this comes out to you as architecture forms. And you have different types of Vastu. You have for Griha, Alaya, Yana, Sayana, and so on and so forth. I just named a few, but you got this right through going on like this. And who are the two key people? One is Vishwakarma. If you look at Vishwakarma, actually, he's just not an architect or a builder or a constructor. The concept of Vishwakarma is there in the Veda itself. To the extent you have an exclusive Rigveda Sukta called Vishwakarma Sukta. It's a huge Sukta of Vishwakarma Sukta. Is there in the Rigveda, and we have made a short 3-minute film of it. It is there on our YouTube channel. Those who want can go to our Bharat Gyan YouTube channel and see that film, 3-minute film on this. We'd be happy to show it here, but for paucity of time we may not be able to. But it's fully there. And the Vishwa, world, karma, the one who creates your world. So from that moment, the the person who does the Shrishti is also Vishwakarma, to the person who builds your space is also Vishwakarma. So that's a continuum again there. And the different types of Vishwakarma who do on different products on earth. These are the 5 main varieties that you have available there for you. So again, all these links is there. And mind you, those who are not unable to take notes, all this is there in the Bharat Gyan blog as a full article. It's a full mini book of about 20 plus pages. You can pick it up there, those who want. And you can offer them the link. Okay. In this, if you see, there are 2 primary names that come up if you look at traditional architecture in India. One is Mayan and the other is Vishwakarma. Let's look at both of them a little. Okay. You have this concept of Mayan, who are the Vastu practitioners, going back many millennia. And one of the earliest Mayan, of course, I'm not saying he is the first Mayan. One of the earliest Mayan that you can think of, anybody can guess? You can say 11,000 years, 12,000 years. I'm not denying any of, I'm not agreeing to it, nor am I denying it. But if you see in the concept of Mayan, one of the earliest great Mayan was Mandodari's father. That is Ravana's father-in-law, who built the great city of Lanka for his daughter and son-in-law. It's mentioned in our book, Ramayana and Lanka. It's there. Those who want, you can flip through the book, Ramayana and Lanka. The book has it, the data of that. So you have the concept of Mayan there. And it's not limited. So that Ramayana is 7,100 years ago. So the concept of architecture, quality architecture, and the whole thought has existed in this land for well over 7,100 years and more. Because when you go to Rig Veda and you speak about Vishwakarma Sukta, it goes back even further for you. And if you look at this, in Kishkinda also, that is 7,100 years ago, there's one more Mayan who speaks to Hanuman here. And he speaks about his achievements. Okay? And in the Tamil text of the Sangam literature of the Silappatikaram, again you have mentioned about Mayan. Okay? So it's especially talking to a Chera king. Chera king is generally from Coimbatore to Palghat, the Malabar region. So all across the land you have Mayan. Similarly, if you go to Indraprastha, that is your modern day Delhi, okay? 5,100 years back, in the Mahabharata period, you had the Maya Sabha. Why is it called Maya Sabha? Because it's built by a Mayan. That's why you have the term Maya Sabha. Okay? It was a par excellence structure, which in a way brought about the Kurukshetra war in a way. You know, otherwise, but this is the thing. And here you have a Mayan talking to Arjuna and Krishna, who introduces himself, says, yes, I can build this for you. Look at the antiquity of the generation. And it doesn't limit itself to the shores of India. You have a Mayan, a Mayasura, traveling overseas. Where does he go to? They are actually big shipbuilders also. All these Mayans are big navigators. They're not navigators, they're big shipbuilders. As I said, they work with wood. So all these good branch of the Mayans traveled from India through Southeast Asia, which was known as Suvarna Bhumi. Bhumi, earth, Suvarna, golden. So Suvarna Bhumi, the golden earth, they traveled across the Shanti Sagar through the Tahiti Islands. The word Tahiti comes from Atiti. Otahiti, Atiti, Otahiti, Tahiti. Tahiti is a French name. So through the Atiti Islands, all the way up to Mexica, which you call Mexico now, and they are the Mayans, which the Spanish called as Mayans. So you got Mayans, Inca, Aztec. Inca is nothing but Anga, Aztec is Azteca. So the 3 groups there. Mayans, Inca, Aztec. So it's actually Mayans, the great builders. What did they build there? Wonderful pyramids they built there. So that's what your proof there about this morning also spoke about pyramids. You can see wonderful pyramids here all along the path that they built. The pyramid for Chandra, the huge pyramids there all over in Machu Picchu, all the places. So they were so wherever they went in the world, be it in Tahiti or be it in the Suvarnabhumi Islands or the Micronesia, look at the pyramids they built all over they went. The Borobudur pyramid, same built by the same Mayan Vishwakarma clan. All across. So the imprint, what you see, is all across the world. Truly. The Nom Bakeng here in Angkor. So you have this all over. Of course, tomorrow I'm going to talk about Mirasol, do that. So, and who says this? Not we, but Miles Poindexter, the US ambassador to Mexico, he calls them Arya Incas who built it. He says they came from Bharatavarsha and built it. So that's what he says. It's a continuous continuity of the chain from India to western coast of America. So that's what it is. And he says this in his 2 books, okay? Written in 1930, much before independence. Okay, that's the book he speaks about. R.E. Incas, he writes this there, okay? It's a race that's got continuity across the land. Okay, that's what he speaks about. It's there, this data is there in my book 2012, The Real Story. Actually, that program, we did a TV interview along with, with Madam Pudni here about many years back, 7-8 years back, okay? So this is what you have, the practitioners all across land. Let's look at the Vishwakarma style. Again, the 2 big projects that they did. One is the Nala Setu, or what you call the Rama Setu, on which our film is there, our book is there, you can read, where very clearly when the effort was being made to build the Nala Setu, what did it do? One Vishwakarma, born of the Vishwakarma clan. So he says, I am born of the loins of Vishwakarma, so I have the skill to build it. I've got trained to build it. So he was a trained Vishwakarma builder who built the Nala Setu. Because Rama, when he flies back, victorious Rama, when he flies back in the Pushpak Vimana, he shows it to Sita Ma and says, it was so difficult to build. It was built because we had a Vishwakarma by name Nala and Nila who could build it for us. So I am naming it Nala Setu. The name given by Rama is Nala Setu. We now, out of the veneration for Rama, call it Rama Setu. But the original name is Nala Setu. Again, we have a film on this. There's a 7-8 minute film in YouTube, in the Bharat Gan channel, you can see it, and also a book on it, Historical Rama, you can see it there. The whole data is how they built it. It was layer by layer construction. There are 11 layers of construction in this bridge. The whole data is how they used trees, they used undersea ridge, everything is there. All the data is available. Okay, and it was a qualified engineer by Nala and his brother Nila who built this, who presented his credentials to his king Sugriva and thereon to Rama to build this bridge. Okay, and they used a foundation which was an undersea layer. There was undulating undersea ridge. They used that to build. On top of it, they piled wood as for a cushion effect. On top of the wood, they put stones, which are large stones. On top of it, they put smaller stones. And that's how they built it. So there's a causeway. So it was an accretion on an already available undersea ridge on which they built it. That's how this Nala Setu bridge was built in a 10:1 ratio, which is now 30 kilometers long, 3 kilometers wide. Okay. It's all there in my film, the whole animation, everything with the same, it's available in the film, you can see. Okay. And what you have is a finally finished bridge. This is one of the marvels of the world which can be seen from space as well. It's been photographed from space as well, that's all put up there. Again, I'm not using the word NASA, it's been done by ISRO also, space thing. So don't give everything credit to somebody else. Our ISRO has also done it, so that's how you have flat finished level there. That's the thing. Similarly, so all that is available, how they built the linear alignment, all the data is available there. In my film, I'm jumping it. Okay, this is what you see from the air in normal flight when you go from Chennai to Colombo. This is what you see there. This is taken from the flight that you see. How it is a very curved, nice, beautiful bridge with edges so well trimmed and nice. A planned effort. All that there. Similarly, if you look at Dwarka, it is a veritable underwater museum of what you can see of the efforts of a Mayan. Again, it was a Mayan, Vishwakarma, who built it. He offers himself because Krishna had earlier saved a Vishwakarma. So he comes and offers himself to build it. So this is the grid that you see of Dwarka. In this Dwarka grid, you see a veritable underwater museum in the coastline of Dwarka of the Bed Dwarka coast. Now you see it there. This is what it is. So this is what you can see. You can see the sea wall here, the wall built, and the anchors. And these anchors tally with the anchors in Phoenicia. So there were ships coming from between Dwarka and Phoenicia. Because the word Dwarka means dwar, gateway, darwaza. English word door, the Urdu word darwaza has its root in dwar, door. So Dwarka, ka, waters, aqua, waters. Okay, vodka is also same ka. So waters. That's also waters. Ud is also water. Ka is also water. Udka, vodka, that's also. So that's how it's traveled. We mentioned that in our book, Indo-Russia. That's also available there. You can see that. So that's how it traveled. So this was a gateway. So Dwarka, as the name says, was a gateway. So here was a boulders of the wall built, and you can see the remnants there. And Krishna then requested a Vishwakarma to build it for him, who reclaimed the land from the sea, and which was earlier Kushasthali. He built Dwarka there. That's how it comes about. Okay, and this is the layout of the Dwarka Nagara, a land reclaimed from sea, a city planned and built there, planned city. okay, on the banks of the Gomati River, which was a distributary of the Saraswati River. And it was built in 6 sectors: residential, commercial, public area, palaces, and industry, shipbuilding, all that. So it was built with wide roads. Wide roads, how much? 18 meters wide roads. We don't know, Bangalore has got 18-meter wide roads now. But you had that in Dwarka. A short-lived city, probably for about 60, 70 years, the city lived because it was washed away in a tsunami in 3036 BCE. November 3066 BC. For that also written a book called Triple Eclipse. That's available. You can see that all the books are there in the Knowledge Center. You can see that. So you have harbor evidence very clearly because you've got this buoys. You can see all the triangular anchors you have there across the land, which weigh about 150 plus kilos at the seabed. All washed away during the tsunami times, available there. So you see this across the land, you see this. And what's happened is, so this was there in Rama times. You had the construction of this bridge that you also had in Mahabharata times. You had this. Then Mahabharata and Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Sindhu, Saraswati civilization, Hapti Hindu were same, similar. They were contemporaneous, one continuous civilization, because you can't have history on one side and geography on the side. History has to sit on geography. Okay, you can't say this is separate, that's separate. Okay, so it is a contemporary. So that is why what you see, the most well-planned townships of the 2,600 plus sites of the Sindhu Saraswati civilization, which is now Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, all the other places that you see, this brings out this aspect very clearly. One of the best planned cities, and for sewage systems, all that. And the important point actually, look at this well that you have there in Mehergarh. Mehergarh is on northwest Pakistan, Afghanistan area. Okay? This well is 5000 BCE and we are in 2000 CE. That means 7000 plus years old well. And for some civilization to build such a well 7000 years back means that civilization must have already been flourishing, existing for at least a couple of 100 years to 1000 years, millennia. So you're talking about a civilization, a continuous, unbroken civilization of 8000 years. That's the beauty of it. Another thing my wife has written in this book, Brand Bharat on architecture, you can see it there. The ratio of the bricks you use from Mehergarh to the Tapti River, to Nepal, to Bihar, Angadesa, the ratios are same. Across 5-6 millennia. Look at this. Sizes may vary because of desachar, but the ratio of the bricks is same. That speaks about a continuity of kalachar. Isn't it amazing? So the bricks tell you a story. The Mayans and the Vishwakarmas, the bricks they made, they tell you a story. That's the beauty of it, okay? And this is, and you have this even, which is the contiguous the Vedic times, where you have very clear mention of roads, cities, and Vahana, Ratha, all those things you have. You have different samhita for it. I don't have time to go into all that. My friends here would not give me the time. They will throw me off. I know he's stronger than me to throw me off the stage. Okay? So you have this 326 BCE, because when Alexander came, this is what a Britisher writes, Benjamin Elphinstone, in the book History of India. He writes, a city teeming with prosperity, with population enjoying highest degree. So that's what he calls India. That means what? You cannot have cities. How many cities are you talking about? 1,500 cities between the Indus rivers alone, Hyphasis and Hydaspes. That means what? 1,500 cities. I don't think we have 1,500 cities there between Hyphasis and Hydaspes now. That means what? All cities being built, Nagara, built places. That for which you need Vishwakarma, Maya, and Vastu. And remnants of it available today. Isn't it wonderful? Amazing. All this is there in our book. You can check it out. Again, Brand Bharat book, all the text, same quote is there, page number, all that is there. Now coming on to, so this land has a tradition of civil engineering, architecture that's got time immemorial and continuous through the ages, unhindered, unbroken. That's the beauty of this land. And we are all the proud inheritors of it. Your heritage, your inheritance is not just the necklace that you wear or a mother gives a daughter or the earrings. This is the heritage of yours. That's the beauty of it. This is truly inheritance of it. This is the beauty of it. And this is now available to us in so many monuments all across India, right from Kashmir to Rameshwaram. You got monuments in Kashmir which follow the same modules. of the Sharda Peeth in POK. Across the LOC it is there. And the Martanda Sun Temple. All this have it. You have this Shakracharya Hill that you have it there. And the Kirban, all the way you have it in northeast also you have this. This continues there. Look at the terracotta temples of the northeast. Same modules, structures continue all across. That is Bharatavarsha for you. The famous terracotta temples of northeast have it. You go west, people speak about the Great Wall of China. What of the second biggest wall here in Kumbhalgarh Fort? The second largest. So this is again same. Look at the concepts are there across the land. He came to break it, could not. He could never manage to get this fort. Look at the wall structures of this fort. Amazing structures that you will get here. That's what you get here. So all across the land. Okay, Jaisalmer I'm going to deal with tomorrow. All the other forts are there. All the data is there. If you go down south to Rameshwaram, look at this corridor. A temple of granite stones built in a Nagara where there's no granite stones. So they had to bring granite stones from a few hundred kilometers away and build a gigantic temple. Centuries ago. That is the labor, the effort with love and affection they built for the land of Bharatavarsha. It was all built by the Bharatiya. The knowledgeable people. Bharata means knowledge. Bharatiya people, knowledge. So they are all people of knowledge, they built it all across the land. Look at this. 1, 2 number of pillars. Amazing, isn't it? You got all across the land. You take it Pattadakal. Amazing structure in central part of India. Okay? You go, where you want, you go, you have this. Khajuraho. You can click any of it, you will get what you want. Okay? And if you go to Ayodhya, you have this also, Ram Janmabhoomi site, where you have very clearly, that is again shown in a book, Ayodhya, the whole data is available. All across the land you have this. And look at the Bauris that have been built. This is the inverted pyramids actually in a way. They're built beautifully all across the land. I'll just click on that. So see here. Look at the structures. Amazing. Unparalleled anywhere in the world. And they didn't limit it to build palaces. They built water harnessing projects everywhere in the world. That's the beauty of it. They built water harnessing projects. Look at the beauty of each one of them. 70 feet deep. Amazing structures. And you had this everywhere. Look at this. Dakshinameru temple. That's of Rajaraja Chola of those days. What you call it? The big temple. Simple word. It's called the big temple. Rajaraja Chola. You have this all across the world. Probably I'll talk about this tomorrow a little more. Near the time. It is architecture audacity for him to build such a big structure. I'll talk about tomorrow when I talk Meru. Okay, that's it. It's just audacity to build. It is geometry in stone. Today I'll talk about it a little bit if you want. Look at this geometry in stone. Amazing. This is the temple you're shown here. Look at the geometry there of this temple. Just take a moment to watch it. I'm not going to talk now. Isn't this amazing geometry? It's geometry in stone of a massive scale. Just watch it. I'm sure there are quite a few architects here. Isn't it? What without your so-called cranes and everything they built here, it was built exactly some 1,000 years back. In a Nagara where there's no big stones. And look at the geometry. Precision. This is precision architecture. This is precision Vastu. Beyond what we can speak. Isn't it? Amazing. So you look at this geometry, how it was built. It was 3 grids, 3 square grids. Grid 1, extended to grid 2, extended to grid 3. See how it falls in so beautifully. So you have the central building here and look at how it comes so beautifully. This is precision, this is geometry. Isn't it amazing? Not just building. And this was done 1,000 years back. And it's a tradition that we have had for 7,000 plus years. Earliest is Ramasetu, 7,100 years back. Built in November 5076 BCE was when Nalasetu was built. We can get that precise to the month when the Nalasetu was built. November 5076 BCE. The why of it is in film and in our book Historical Drama. You can see that. So all across India you have this sort of constructions. Through the ages, consistently, every one of them. Okay, you got the Elephanta caves, amazing, bead, Ellora. I can't close without showing Ellora. A clam, marvel, built across. See, they're built across 7 generations. So the man who started the planning, the first generation, did not live to see the 7th generation structure finish. That's the beauty of it. You take Greece, Parthenian, look at the size. There's double that. Fully rock cut. Amazing. So these are the classics of the world of India. And India is proud to share this with the world. That's the beauty of it. Look at the Gajalakshmi there. Each structure all across India you got. Amazing structures. And you talk about town planning. You can't, actually, I had been to many years back to the architecture school in Ahmedabad. For the convocation, they gave an Angavastra of the town planning design of Madurai. That was the convocation shawl of Madurai they gave. Similarly, Kanchi, everywhere. If you take Jaipur, built 200 years back, that same Vastu town planning was employed. Actually, we both walked a few months back in the Nagara of Jaipur to understand the town planning there. The grid, the concept is also there. So all across we have this, be it Patliputra, be it Ayodhya, everywhere we have it. Ayodhya also similarly like that. You had a planned city of 8 circles, 9 gates, everything. So all that is explained. The Nagara, the Durga by the Sarayu Nadi, all the data which comes. So that the whole thing is planned. And what did ISRO do? They did a wonderful job. They identified all the Puranic cities. They did a satellite mapping of it, and they gave how all the cities mentioned in the Ramayana, Mahabharata, different Purana are actually in the ground today. ISRO did a wonderful job of satellite. We mentioned again that in our book. It's there. And how the temples were all planned around it. That's again there. So when we speak about the archaeological sites of India, we have to take these concepts of Vastu in it. Unfortunately, most of the modern day archaeologists are blissfully unaware of Vastu, except probably some 5-7% of them, not even 10%. We have to, as Vastu practitioners, get the archaeologists of present day to understand, because they are the ones going to manage. Today, by law, by department, they are managing these monuments. They should be aware of the Vastu behind it to manage it. For example, I'll tell you a classic case. What happened in Angkor Wat some 15 years back was that the French were very seriously involved with Angkor Wat. They wanted to maintain it, manage it. But they didn't know what was there in to maintain, because they didn't have the basic mathematical understanding. So when they got some Indian Sanskrit scholars to help them unravel it, they understood it. So we need to have a combination of this to unravel and do it accordingly. Okay, that is how we see it. And many people have spoken about this. I'm not going to go into it. So across the land, and the most important thing, Vastu is not a subject for the past, it's for the present, and most importantly, when this government is talking about smart cities, Vastu is all about smart cities. How do we get into the smart city concept with our Vastu? We have to be grounded, as Gurudev says, and understand and use this knowledge, tremendous knowledge of the land, for building the smart cities. What all is getting smart cities is not just about shopping malls, it's not about connectivity, it's not about roads, but the concept to it. What are those concepts? So we have done a full detail, right from Ayodhya 5,100 BCE to Jaipur 750, we have the smart city concept. It's not new. Smart city is not a new concept to India. From then we have had the concept of smart cities across the world. What all we have had. Madurai itself was a smart city of those days. You had smart cities across the land today. So many universities have used it. Srirangam have used it. Here they've used it, smart city concept. So Vishwakarma built it, all this. Dwaraka was a smart city of those days, 5,100 years back, which was washed away in October 3036 BCE. Like that it will go. So layout, it's all there. So you had smart cities across it. And one key point I'll say, and I'll close for the session. I know it's taking time. You can have all other aspects. But this morning when we spoke about Brihad Samhita of Varahamihira, there's one point there. 1/6 of the surface area should be covered in water. That's important. Because that is what gives you the humidity, the nami. India is a tropical country. So you have high temperatures. But when you have that nami, that humidity, it makes it more salubrious to live in. So smart city should have this 1/6 water surface covered with water, so the area is more livable. That gives it that smart living. So apart from grids, we also have smart living, which our Vastu and our Brihad Samhita, our Varahamihira share for the modern world. So with this, you can understand the concept of Vishwa World Kar to do. So we are the executors of our world today. Using this traditional knowledge of land, which has come down to us from Mayasura, Surya Siddhanta, to Ravana's father-in-law, Mandodari's father, to their own, and we have shared it already with the world many times over, as I showed you. We can again gain this knowledge, be knowledgeable, and share it to the world to make the world and the town planning through all these wonderful texts as the pillars. So Chaturvedi Mangalam is where we have knowledgeable communes. So we talk about knowledge communes. We speak about knowledge communes of those days, or the 4 pillars of knowledge. Okay, I don't have time for that, thank you. But this is what we do. We have to get back to knowledge communes with our knowledge, so that we live as a smart city balancing tradition, modernity, the concepts from tradition to small city, bound in boundless, space in spaces, hinterland development, and all this we have to come up. So we have an eco model, two ecos. One is ecology, one is economy. Our Vastu Shastra, Maya Matam, Surya all of us, all the Mayans and Vishwakarmas teach us about the eco model. Unfortunately, the last 200 years, because of a very heavy Western influence, we focus only on one eco and forgot the other eco. We have to have a balance of ecology and economy, which is what she coined up. My wife coined it. She came up with the eco model, where we have this concept of smart cities across India. We should plan this so that we have an energy efficient living, not energy inefficient living. And we have this very clearly. So we have a happiness quotient. That's very important, especially in art of living. So happy to speak about happiness, because it's our core mantra, okay? Both in quality and quantity, and come up with this swasti rastu, pushti rastu, tushti rastu. Thank you so much for giving this presentation. It's all available in our ebook. This mini book is available on our website, on our blog. Those who want to, for further reads, available, and our books are here. You can check it out. And those who are on blog, on YouTube, can certainly go through our Twitter handle. We'll be posting all this there, on our Facebook also, at Bharat Gyan, BHARATHGYAN. You take it forward from there. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Tomorrow we'll talk about on Meru. Architecture is for civil engineering and for space for all humans. Thank you. Would you want to say something?
He has made all the general comments. There was nothing major to make. Like he said at the beginning, just one point. We talk about India being a land of diversity. And we typically cite our monuments and structures. So as symbols of this diversity, how did this come about? We've all been talking about Vastu in the morning, about how it has to be applicable to local conditions. So that is with regards to the plan. But when you come to execute also, these temples, if you see, have been built using local resources. So what are the kind of materials available locally? And those materials have influenced the motifs, the design, the curves or straight lines that are possible with either a soft stone or a hard stone. So this is how you see the same idea. It might be the same parrot, a same hamsa, but you will see that being depicted differently in the east, in a Odisha temple on red stone, laterite stone temples, and it will be depicted differently in granite temples of the south. But what united them is the concept of the Vastu ideology, the idea of planning, the idea of looking at space as a continuum, and how even we normally say that it's a door and you shouldn't do this. It's a space. Entire thing is your space. So within this space, you're carving your small spaces with your Vishwakarma, who's building your small world for you. So this idea is what has been uniting. So that is the unity, and the diversity is in the art and the kala that you see in the form of various structures and the shapes and the arts and motives that you have been seeing. So that is one point I thought which would be relevant to make here. Thank you.